Vornehmlich für ihre mächtigen Schilderungen aus dem mittelalterlichen Leben des skandinavischen Nordens verlieh die Schwedische Akademie im Jahre 1928 Sigrid Undset als dritter Frau überhaupt den Literaturnobelpreis. Da waren schon 27 Literaturnobelpreise vergeben. Wie aktuell und mächtig Sigrid Undsets Schilderungen heute noch sind, das können wir dieser Tage wiederentdecken. Der Verlag Hoffmann und Campe hat eine vorzügliche Neuübersetzung von Undsets Roman Viga J. und Victis herausgebracht. Und diese vorzügliche Neuübersetzung stammt wie so viele großartige Übersetzungen aus dem Norwegischen von Gabriele Haafs. Ich mache eine Pause, damit Sie klatschen können. Wir möchten Ihnen jetzt dieses Buch und seine Autorin vorstellen. Dazu begrüße ich die Sigrid Undset-Expertin und Schriftstellerin Kristin Brandtsegg Johansen und den Schriftsteller und Übersetzer Kristof Magnusson, der das Vorwort zur Neuausgabe von Viga J. und Victis verfasst hat. Welcome.
Morgen.
Herzlich willkommen. But let's face it, Kristin, the author we would like to promote here is rather unknown in Germany. What is Sigrid Undset standing in Norway? Is she read a lot there? Is she taught in school? Is she alive, so to speak?
I think she is alive, but as everything is in the reading of Sigrid Undset has gone in waves, and I also know that between the wars in Germany, she was one of the most read authors in Germany, as the same as she was in Norway. But then after the 70s, I think she had some critics, and she became some kind of old Catholic. And she was removed from the reading, but now I think it's like she's on her way back, and it's important as well.
Es gibt halt immer wieder diese Wellen, das Auf und Ab. Einer der Orte, an denen ihr allerdings beständig gedacht wird, ist das Literaturfestival in Lillehammer, das nach ihr benannt ist. Ich hatte mal die Gelegenheit, mit Kristof Magnusson durch Island zu reisen. Da hat er einen Freund und mir eine berühmte Sage erzählt, die Grettis-Saga. Und weil ich weiß, dass er so ein guter Erzähler ist, could you please tell us what is happening in Viga J. und Victis?
Well, it starts very much like your typical romance story. We have Victis, daughter of a rich farmer in Norway, daughter of Gunnar, and she's looking for a husband basically, or the family is looking for a husband for her, and then Viga J. shows up from Iceland, and in the beginning,
may I interrupt you? The time of action is I think the 11th century, so it's the time of Christianization in Scandinavia, and when I read the book I didn't know anything, so I really thought, okay, this is your typical romance story. We have the rich princess, and then we have the suitor that comes from a country far, far away. But then something very very bad happens, because initially, Victis sort of has feelings for Viga J, but then he doesn't behave very well, and he threatens to damage the family honor, and she says that she will never get married to him, and then he rapes her, and basically the rest of the story is telling whether the consequences of this crime, and the consequences mostly for Victis, how she experiences, of course, a lot of psychological damage, rage, self-loathing, hate. She raises her son in order to take revenge on the rapist, and also, which I find very interesting, it's not only about the psychological consequences, but also of the social consequences. She is stigmatized as a victim, and for me it seems that these social consequences weigh almost as badly and are almost as traumatizing as the actual crime, and that I think it's very fascinating. So, yeah. You have to stop me because I really fell in love with this book.
No. Thank you very much. We get an idea über diese Geschichte einer Vergewaltigung, die sich im 11. Jahrhundert zuträgt und deren Konsequenzen, die das Buch dann durchziehen. Wir kommen immer wieder jetzt natürlich im Laufe des Gesprächs darauf und greifen die einzelnen Handlungselemente dann nochmal auf. Kristin, you wrote a book about Sigrid Undset as a debater in the field of the rights of women at the time. To what political, social questions did she refer here in that novel?
In Vigalotten Vigdis. Yes, and I have to say, I think it's so interesting that this German publisher has chosen just Vigalotten Vigdis. And also in Norway, it's some kind of not much read book now, but Sigrid Undset appreciated very much herself.
The most.
Yeah.
I think she's regarded it as her most important work, isn't it?
Yeah, and also Jenny and many of her more known novels she was not very satisfied with them when some years after she wrote them. But Vigalotten Vigdis she mentioned especially as a work that meant a very much to her. And to answer your question, I think it's because it is for the first time she went down in the history, went out of her own time and many hundreds of years back in time to the sagas, and exactly as Kristof said, it's both a love story and this merciless saga world, and that the modern thing is the feelings and the individuals' possibilities to have their own choices and everything, and then she just mix it with this saga merciless universe, and then it's so interesting, and how Vigdis is like navigating through this situation. And I think it was so interesting that you wrote about Vigdis as a Kill Bill and a Daenerys Targaryen, and
yes, but
because she's really something.
She is like that, and then again she's not, because she I don't want to tell you the ending, but she's not a heroine. She basically she gets revenge, and it destroys her happiness, because I think Daenerys Targaryen in Game of Thrones is much happier actually, and she's not very happy to begin with. So it's
No.
but just one thing. When I mentioned that I was going to write that forward, I told my mother, and she knew Sigrid Undset very well. She grew up in the 50s, and she strongly identified with her books and the stories of these women who tried to live an independent life, and all the difficulties they faced and the obstacles. And she's not at all not completely unknown, but it's probably a generational thing.
Yeah.
Um vielleicht die beiden Antworten jetzt nochmal kurz miteinander verbinden. Es gibt eine sehr schöne Episode, in der Sigrid Undset ihrer kleinen Nichte die Bücher gezeigt hat. Und dann der Nichte gezeigt hat, dass dieses Buch, Vigdis und Vigajot, das sei ihr wichtigstes Buch. Und warum? Dieser Bezug jetzt gerade zu Kill Bill und so weiter, das sei der Roman, in dem die Frau wirklich die Handelnde ist. Durchgehend die Handelnde ist, anders als zum Beispiel in diesem 3-bändigen Werk Kristin Lavransdottir, für die sie dann ja auch den Nobelpreis bekommen hat. Insofern eine ausgezeichnete Wahl von Hoffmann und Campe, dieses Buch jetzt hier quasi zur Wiederentdeckung von Sigrid Undset vorzulegen. Was interessant ist, was Kristin gerade gesagt hat, die Themen der Zeit des beginnenden 19. 20. Jahrhunderts werden zurücktransportiert in die Welt der Sagas. Und ich würde Kristof Magnusson, der selber aus dem Isländischen übersetzt, der 2011 beim großen Saga-Übersetzungsprojekt mitgewirkt hat, die Grettis-Saga übersetzt hat, eine der zentralen Isländer-Sagas, aber auch überhaupt einen der Urtexte des europäischen Romans, fragen, wie macht Sigrid Undset, wie funktioniert das denn überhaupt, wenn ich Themen aus der Gegenwart in die Saga-Welt, wie funktioniert das sprachlich, damit das auch wiedererkennbar ist, und welche Brüche entstehen da, welche Spannung entsteht da?
About the sagas, it echoes, of course, certain motives in the plot, but I think also the language is probably the most important thing. What she took from the sagas, this very laconic tone that is really a very simple way of narration, and at the same time it's simple, but it's not simple-minded, and that of course is very, very hard to do, because that's what the sagas do, and that's what Sigrid Undset does, and that's very hard for a translator to come across, because very easily this kind of simple elegance gets just crude and clumsy. But that's I think the great achievement of Gabriele Haas, that she actually managed to have that simple tone, and at the same time you always have the feeling that you are reading a work of literature and something very, very, very elegant, and that's very well done. And I'm really happy that this worked out, because it's difficult to translate something which is inspired by something else, because you actually have to translate two layers. You have to think sagas, and then you have to think Undset. So it's
Why are the sagas of the Icelanders a good frame of reference, or even a provocative reference for a book about female rights?
I don't know how to answer that, but I think Sigrid, it's a part of the story that Sigrid Undset loved these sagas since she was a child, because her father read them to her, and some of them she read so many times, and I think it's some kind of universe she had in her head, and she wanted to go there, and when she went to the sagas, both in this Vigalotten Vigdis and in Kristin Lavransdatter, then she find her format and her universe. But I think she was. It's interesting and difficult to understand how she wrote about so many strong, complicated female heroines who navigated through their lives and never became a victim. And even though she was criticized by the feminists and the in her time, and also in the in the years after, she was criticized by the feminists because of this what is it, Schlecht, and the religious struggling, and the women as mothers, and she was criticized and made anti-feminist. So, which I think she was also a big polemist, and I think maybe this saga universe with the shortcut, complicated, realistic language, and she was like writing up through these feminist ideals about freedom, and she didn't believe in that, so she was a very merciless author.
And while you're talking, I realized one way of provocation is the sagas definitely have not been written by a woman. We do not know who wrote them, but we guessed it were priests in Icelandic monasteries in the 13th century, but we do not know of any saga being written by a woman. So this is the first saga of the Icelanders written by a female author. Yeah, which is a kind of which is a kind of provocation also, but it's very interesting, and I think this is a change of the Scandinavian perspective. For you, the sagas, are kind of what the fairy tales are to us in Germany. And what I find so fascinating, that there are strong female characters in the saga.
Definitely.
Yeah, maybe probably this leads back to their origin, that they were oral stories told in the farmhouses, and you simply cannot tell a story in which the women, are oppressed and so on and so on. The women sitting there say, "Wait a second, that's not true. That would not happen. This is not realistic." And here the realism combines probably with that. There is one phrase of our time, toxic masculinity, toxische Männlichkeit, and you use that term in the foreword of the book. How is it applicable on the book to that book?
That's also one of the aspects that I found fascinating. That this book, written in 1909, is in a way a book that addresses a lot of issues that are very important today, like this concept of toxic masculinity, that which is basically a concept that how do you say that with few words? Let me think. Well, you probably toxic masculinity. I think it's very self-explanatory, actually. So you all know what this is about. But if in the book, it's very interesting that this crime, the rape that Vigaljot commits, is not only something which is bad for the victim. It's bad for the whole environment and for basically everybody around them. And of course, Vigdis suffers a lot, but also the perpetrator himself. He lives a very unhappy life. He goes back to Iceland. He marries. He can't forget Vigdis, and so it's what I thought was interesting was the sort of systemic approach to describing the results and the consequences of a terrible crime, and that's what I think is very modern and something which I have never read from that time, and something which I think is more something that happens. I don't know, since the 1990s. It's really very, very much ahead of her time.
Yeah.
This book,
and it's also so in the beginning there when because I think she wants to love him and she wants to go run away with him.
Yeah,
and then
it
this
starts
happens.
as a romance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this happens, so it's like it's a good story, and
it is ever so it's ever so fascinating, like you say, and one is thinking about, okay, how did she get these kind of ideas, this way of perspective? In the foreword, Kristof hints at the fact that there seems to be an autobiographical element in the story. Vigdis suffers a social decline, which may mirror Sigrid Undset's struggle after the death of her father. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree, and I think it's interesting, and I think all of her novels can be read that way. And I think she was like struggling with some questions. She lost her father. She was like, but all the things she was struggling with, I think she uses her novels to try to find out, and she puts her heroines into Rome, or she sends it to the saga, and then she'll just finds out what is it about these things about.
Die Essenz eines Lebens und der Versuch, mit den existenziellen Erfahrungen, die man selber eben die Sigrid Undset gemacht hat, literarisch für sich selbst zu perspektivieren. Kristof, in the foreword, you named two authors which were for a great surprise to me, heavily influenced by Sigrid Undset. And one can say, as she won the Nobel Prize, two later Nobel Prize winners were influenced by the Norwegian one, Halldor Laxness.
Yeah.
And it's you may say it yourself.
The other one that's actually quite a surprise. The other one is Heinrich Böll, and I don't think anybody knew this because when I started writing the foreword, I was in Iceland, and by coincidence I came across an interview with Heinrich Böll that he gave to Morgunblaðið, the Icelandic newspaper, which has never been translated into any other language. And this interview from the early 70s, I think, there he says that when he wrote his novel Und sagte kein einziges Wort, which deals a lot with problems of male aggression and toxic masculinity, if you like, he was very much influenced by the work of Sigrid Undset. And since he only said that in an Icelandic newspaper in the 1970s, nobody ever realized. But now the world knows.
Und die Schlagzeile sollte morgen früh bitte lauten: Heinrich Böll verdankt Nobelpreis norwegischer Autorin. Haben die Kollegen von der Presse das mitgeschrieben? Ja, genau. Ja, das ist gut. Aber Haldor Laxness ist auch nicht schlecht. Wie ist denn Haldor Laxness? How did Haldor Laxness relate to Sigrid Undset?
Well, that was mostly because he also wrote a book which was set in the time of the sagas and tried to imitate the style of the sagas, Gerpla, and yeah.
But you know, it's all surprising, fascinating information. You said that she was one of the most, even in the time after the war. What was her standing in Germany here?
She was Kristin Lauransdatter and Olav Audunson was the most read books in Germany. She was more than Knut Hamsun, and just one book was more read in Germany at that time, and that was Erik Maria Remarque's
Investment Nice.
Yes.
Let's try to say it at the same time. Investment. Das muss man sich mal vorstellen. Die Romane von Sigrid Undset waren mehr gelesen als Im Westen nichts Neues und wurden dann aber natürlich von den Nationalsozialisten verboten. Just one last question. But before, as you mentioned Knut Hamsun, and we can't go into that detail, and I would say it in Germany, allein der Vergleich von Knut Hamsun und Sigrid Undset könnte Bände füllen. Sie, die sozusagen eine entschiedene Gegnerin des Nationalsozialismus gewesen ist, was Hamsun gemacht hat, das wissen Sie hier wahrscheinlich im Raum alle. Sie, die sogar einen ihrer Söhne verloren hat im Kampf gegen die Nazis und dann mal eingeladen worden ist von deutschen Exilschriftstellern, sie solle sich sozusagen einem Aufruf zum Frieden beteiligen. Eine Anthologie zum Frieden. Hat sie das verweigert, da mitzumachen, weil sie gesagt hat, sie befürwortet absolut den Krieg gegen Nazi-Deutschland. Sie möchte nicht, dass sie betrauert den Tod ihres Sohnes, aber sie hätte nicht gewollt, dass dieser Sohn in einer Welt lebt, die von den Nazis regiert wird. Was für eine starke Frau. What influence does she have on contemporary Norwegian literature, female writers? Do you know something about this?
Today?
Yes,
I think I just 2 weeks ago I heard, for example, Vigdis Hjorth was talking about Sigrid Undset and what it had meant to her that there was a huge female author of this quality, and in her language, of course, that means a lot. And she also have a reading of she chose exactly to talk about Vigdis. It's not possible to find a heroine like that in literature, even if not then and not now. So she just lifted up Vigdis as and also through Martha Auli, which was her debut book. So she was like just and I think we have had some conversation at the Norwegian literary festivals where contemporary authors are choosing one book of Sigrid Undset's book, and we are talking about why should we read her today, and that's interesting conversations. But I think these huge epic novels with a lot of forest and they have been a little bit out of reading, but now maybe they will be because of Game of Thrones and these huge fairy tales, the interest for these fairy tales, that maybe and we Norwegians love when someone abroad are interested in our
classics.
Yes, and so there was an American literary journalist who wrote that Sigrid Undset should be the new Elena Ferrante, and HBO should look to Gudbrandsdalen and Sigrid Undset to find a new fantasy universe. Yeah. So then we was very glad, and we hope that Sigrid Undset will get back in the.
Not only that. One of the dedicated Sigrid Undset readers in the world is Margaret Atwood.
Yeah.
And we will hand over the guest of honor role on Sunday into the hands of Margaret Atwood. We know that it's in the best hands of her. But before you go, so thank you ever so much. Before you go, we want to give you a little taste of what this saga sounds like, and that so you get a real impression. It's really saga stuff. Kristof is going to read now. I asked Kristin which passage to pick. It's her choice, and Kristof redet.
So, das ist jetzt diese, wie gesagt, absolut großartige Übersetzung von Gabriele Haafs. Etwas, worüber wir noch gar nicht gesprochen haben, nicht nur gibt es diese Vergewaltigung, es wird auch noch der Vater umgebracht von Vigdis. Und diesen Mord, den rächt sie gleich selbst. Und diese Stelle lese ich jetzt, wie sie den Mörder ihres Vaters, Sie werden sehen. So, Eyjolf heißt er übrigens.
Der Mörder oder der Vater?
Der Mörder. Also sie kommt dahin und Eyjolf da wo auf dem Hof, wo er ist, und denkt, Eyjolf wird wohl glauben, heute schon gute Arbeit geleistet zu haben. Vermutlich schläft das Schwein jetzt, wo es sich den Wanst vollgeschlagen hat. Danach ging sie hinüber in ihre Kammer. Sie öffnete ihre Truhe und nahm das Godenenmesser heraus, band sich ein dunkles Tuch um den Kopf und legte einen dunklen Umhang um. Dann ging sie hinaus auf den Hofplatz, holte sich Schier und Stöcke aus dem Laubengang und lief los über die Felder zum Wald hin und dann am Wald entlang, nordwärts nach Götestad. Sie machte im Norden einen Bogen um die Häuser und hielt sich im Schatten des niedrigen Hügels hinter dem Hof. Unter den Bäumen lag eine hartgefrorene Schneedecke und das Laufen war leicht, und schon nach kurzer Zeit konnte sie die weiße Böschung am See und die Holzfällerhütte sehen, die Leute von Grimbelünter dort errichtet hatten. Viele Menschen waren hier unterwegs gewesen und hatten Baumstämme geschleift, aber es war niemand zu sehen. Vigdis hielt sich zwischen den Bäumen und konnte unbemerkt zur Hütte gelangen. Sie trat aus den Schieren und schaute hinein. Neben der Tür lag eine Axt und ein Schild. Beide gehörten Eyjolf. Die Hütte war 3 Stämme hoch und sehr eng. Vigdis ging hinein, dort lagen 2 schlafende Männer. Einer war Eyjolf. Vigdis ging erst zu der anderen Schlafstätte. Sie nahm den Umhang, mit dem sich der Mann zugedeckt hatte, wickelte ihm den um den Kopf. Mit der anderen Hand zog sie ihr Godenenmesser hervor und stieß es ihm in die Kehle. Der Mann war sofort tot. Dann drehte sie sich zu der Stelle um, wo Eyjolf lag. Vigdis legte ihm die Hand auf die Brust und weckte ihn. Wach auf, Eyjolf. Jetzt bekommst du, was du schon so lange begehrst. Hier ist Vigdis und will mit dir scherzen. Eyjolf fuhr aus dem Schlaf hoch. Es war dunkel in der Hütte, er konnte sie nicht richtig sehen. Vigdis fuhr fort. Und es stimmt schon, dass ich ehrlos bin. Schließlich suche ich dein Bett auf. Im selben Moment stieß sie mit dem Messer zu. Diesmal traf Vigdis nicht daneben. Eyjolf sank zurück und das Blut spritzte aus seinem Hals. Sie stach noch 2-mal zu und beim letzten Mal zog sie das Messer nicht heraus. Sie ließ den Schaft los, beugte sich vor, um Eyjolf sterben zu sehen. Sie zog die Hände durch sein Blut und wischte sie an seinen Haaren ab. Eyjolf hauchte sein Leben aus und Vigdis ging hinaus, band die Schier an ihren Füßen fest und jagte durch den Wald davon.
So, meine Damen und Herren, jetzt wissen Sie, was Sie lesen müssen. Jetzt sind Sie wach. Das Buch gibt's draußen. Vielen Dank, Kristin. Vielen Dank, Kristof.